Welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. We got a special guest tonight. Your favorite and mine. Dr. Gary Brucato in the house. Dr. Gary, thanks for joining us tonight, and I appreciate it. Tonight we're going to talk about what I call the ambush of the healthcare CEO. I know that this kind of thing's right up your alley.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of profiling, not really, I guess you could call it profiling, but Dr. Brucato is a forensic psychologist, and he is the author of The New Evil that you can pick up at any bookstore. Also, you can get it on Amazon. And if you do, please leave a review for The Good Doctor. How are you, Dr. Gary?
Very well. Counting down the days till Christmas, which is a time of year I love.
You're a big fan?
Well, I think it's extremely beautiful if you pause in that Charlie Brown's Christmas kind of way and think about what the actual meaning of it is. It is a profoundly beautiful time of year, definitely.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Christmas and just kind of the ambiance and atmosphere of everything. I always kind of have been, and as much as I love it, I love when it's over too. Is that weird?
Well, I think what you mean is the incredible amount of work that goes into it, the gift buying, the commercialization, the decorating, the whatever. But the important thing is to not allow that to gobble up the meaning of it. Sometimes I think it's almost by design, by spiritual design, that those things pull us out of the actual purpose of Christmas, which is much more about the small, the easy to miss, of all the places that, the maker of the universe could choose to pop up, choosing a filthy cave or stable filled with animals and undesirables with a couple of kings thrown in, a couple of magi thrown in, is kind of fascinating to me. But I think it tells a great deal about the significance of love and gift giving. And
it's more of, not where you are, but who you're with, and the special meaning of, I've always loved the story of the three wise men. I've just always thought that it was a fascinating part of the story, the story of Christmas. And how it's like, oh, the king is here, and then they find him in a stable.
Tells you everything you need to know. Incidentally, speaking of three wise men, is there any possibility anybody be joining us tonight, or is it two wise men? Two hopefully wise men.
So far two, maybe three. I haven't heard back yet, but
okay.
We have invited a third wise man on, so that would one and a half wise men. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, I suppose I'm the half.
And and then we got Festivus coming up as well, feats of strength, things like that.
The airing of grievances.
The airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people, and one of the most honest takes of a family dinner that you'll ever see. And but tonight we're going to start off, and we'll take some calls later on in the show as well. But we're going to start off with the killing of I guess you would call it an assassination. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like, Dr. Gary. How would you kind of frame this up, and then we can hit it?
Well, I think we have to be careful about the choice of word. I mean, the word assassin, of course, just means a murderer, but it has an implication of killing a prominent figure, generally a political figure or a celebrity, a public figure for some reason. And I think until we truly understand the motive, we should be cautious about the word. I mean, probably the safest bet right now is simply to say the cold-blooded murderer of Brian Thompson. I think it's important that we say his name and kind of understand that this was a human being. But because one of the things I have been horrified by is that there are people in the public who are actually hoping that this offender is not captured because they view him as something of an anti-hero who targeted an individual that represents a gigantic capitalistic system that they consider evil. And that aggrandizement of the offender has been horrifying to me because at the end of the day, this is a human being that was killed, as I said, in cold blood. So I think we need to start by saying that we're not really going to countenance people that are kind of glad that this happened. I don't think that's an appropriate attitude. People are entitled, to have certain attitudes about certain businesses or companies or whatever, but I think celebrating a murder is a really bizarre thing, and I'm not a fan of that attitude.
I mean, I share those sentiments as well, and I know that it's this whole Robin Hood type belief, but I mean, if you just boil it down to it, it's cold-blooded murder.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, we have to understand that, and but there are different theories about this that obviously we need to discuss, and I want you to know that there are several major media outlets, television shows, so forth, news agencies, news shows that have been asking me to comment, and I had been demurring doing that because I have wanted to really formulate my thoughts. I keep remembering the admonition of Sherlock Holmes when he says that it's a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. And I think that's very true. Part of the problem, maybe it's the way I think about a case or whatever, but I kind of think in a kind of a syllogism, like if this, if this, then that, if this, and I'm stuck in that syllogism without this. Oh, Chris! I'm thrilled. There's Chris. I said we're the three wise men tonight. So I'm so happy you're here. Before I started blabbing on, Chris, what a show you just did. Yeah, right, 2.5. Yeah, but Chris, I think I want to tell everybody in the audience, when this show is over, I really urge you to watch the excellent episode of the Interview Room that Chris did tonight.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic.
It was fantastic because you had Greg Cooper, who of course people will know as the person who followed John Douglas at behavioral science at FBI. He's also the head of the Cold Case Foundation. Chris and I are on, and he weighed in and dropped some novel idea also that he had been chatting about with me behind the scenes. Dropped something into the opinions on what could have been going on here that I think is really intriguing. Chris, I think you'd agree. I think that was a really big thing to have him wonder about, and we'll talk about that. And you had Dean Jackson there, from the foundation. You had that was Thomas Hose, right? The author Thomas Hose, and they, there's a book that's just been put out on. You can buy it, and I urge you to, on the creation of the foundation, the Cold Case Foundation. But it was really excellent because what it was a sobering, intelligent discussion of this CEO murder. We're going to do a little of the same here, but I feel like it injected some common sense into the story and did exactly what I'm saying. It kind of paused and said, let's not leap logically here until we have more data. Because the things that I'm hearing on some other programs and in the news are really surprising me. They're really logical leaps, and some of them are kind of wacky. Chris, you know what I'm talking about, like the kind of over-the-top interpreting of this situation. So what I wanted to say, and then now that Chris is here especially, I just want to say this and then kind of get into more of a discussion about this, because I think Chris is going to really be great. Talk about some of the law enforcement stuff, and Josh, I can't wait for your thoughts too. Is that if you were to take all of the information we currently have, what you realize is that you're sort of stuck without more data, that one of four things is going on here. And you really shouldn't make a leap until you have a little more info, right? The first hypothesis is that this is a guy with some kind of a grudge against, healthcare. Maybe he had a family member that had claims denied, who had some kind of pre-existing condition. Maybe that's why he's like alone at Thanksgiving time and is up in New York, obsessing over this. Maybe that's the meaning of the, the anger towards these companies, and, is the symbolism of what's written on the bullets and the monopoly money. That's one theory. The second hypothesis, that all of that is a kind of ruse, that this is a guy who had some other motive, like, for whatever reason. And those are all red herrings. That's the second possibility. Third possibility, which Greg was alluding to on the show, is that there is some third party that benefits by way of inheritance or by way of, eliminating somebody that they had a conflict with. And of course, law enforcement will do due diligence if there's anything to hint at that. But that's a possibility, right? The hired gun kind of possibility. And then the fourth possibility, which I haven't heard anybody talk about yet, is the possibility that this is actually a kind of spree killer that sees himself like a kind of Death Wish style vigilante that killed somebody, hopped on a bus, and is now off to the next target. And so I think those four things cannot be distinguished from one another at this point. We don't have enough information. So I really want to kind of hand it over to Chris, but because Chris, I think you would agree, the law enforcement on this was pretty fantastic. And what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, but it was a no-brainer. I mean, seriously, because the fact that the guy chose New York City. How far is he from your office?
Oh, it was let's see, less than a mile.
Yeah. I mean, you've got money, resources, systems, and we talked a little bit about that earlier. And thank you so much for your kindness, and Gary, and always, weighing in on your kind thoughts there and Josh. Appreciate the invite here.
Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. I know that you just came off of a busy show, so thank you.
I looked down at the menu. I saw corn dogs, and I said, I'm in. Corn dogs at the lab, and I come over here, and there's the two of you, and I'm thinking,
corn dogs for everybody.
Yeah. Well, we missed you. It's been too long, and oh, look at this, Chris. People are making jokes that maybe he threw pizza in the garbage outside my office, like Hoyerman.
That wouldn't surprise me. You're like a magnet.
I am
with these people.
But this guy, I think what you're suggesting is, and you talked about this on your program too, that if the notion that this was some kind of brilliant assassin is really goofy. I mean, Mary Ellen O'Toole, right? The venerable Mary Ellen O'Toole went on a news program, I think today, and her opinion was like, this guy basically lives in a fantasy world where he probably played too many video games or something. And that, and she sees it, that the monopoly money and the whole thing, it suggests somebody that's kind of playing out a game. It's like a fantasy, a game. And there are a lot of things, Chris, I think you and I and Josh, I think we'd agree, are pretty amateurish for somebody that's supposed to be so.
Yeah, I mean, look at the screen. You think a professional would do this?
Well, I have a whole theory about this, but I mean, Chris, on the video, he lets a witness walk by just runs right by. He's on camera. He doesn't shoot the camera. He doesn't even realize there's a camera there. He, the way that he hits the victim, the hour at which he did it, the fact that if he was studying this person's habits, which he must have been, he didn't isolate him somewhere and kill him more privately.
And first of all, he's not a good shot. Josh, do you have the video of the guy getting shot?
I can bring it up.
Because I want to, something nobody's talked about or pointed out yet.
Yeah.
But I'll point it out to everybody real fast. Professionals that spend, a lot of time at the range, folks that know what they're doing, would not make this first shot.
It was to the leg, right, Chris?
Yeah, he missed, because what he does is he pulls that's a heavy finger. Okay. That's him running away. But the reason being is when he's initially pointing, now he's got the right stance. His feet are in what they call the weaver position. Okay. They call it the Weaver stance. Okay, yeah. If you go back for a minute.
Well, he's certainly weaving, Chris.
Well, okay, right there. You can't really see his feet, but if you were to look down at his feet, he's had some type of training of some sort. But this guy is not the sharpest tool in the shed. And so the first round that goes off, you can't see the victim get hit in this particular video, but he hits him in the left leg. And the reason for that is he overcompensates the weapon. So whenever you're at the range and you're shooting a target, if you just overcompensate just a little, your round's going to go down. Okay. And that's what he did. He doesn't lock his right arm. A professional shooter would lock their right arm, okay, and come out. You see it's got an elbow tilt in it, okay, in his arm. And so at the first round that hits this guy, he's overcompensated that round that goes off. It hits him in the leg, and the poor guy starts to hobble away, and that's when he turns. And it wasn't only until the guy is down on the ground that's probably the kill shot in the chest, because he's turned around and he's looked at him. So this guy is either, I think folks have given him way too much credit, but he's not a very good shot.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just saying. I mean, you could see that the multiple shots, and then, like you say, Chris, the kill shot. It's usually, I mean, it doesn't seem like a professional hit, like he's hired through some, dark agency or something.
Although,
and the other thing, a professional would have shot him right from there. He would have not have stepped up on him. A professional would have gone boom, 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 and then walked past, boom, the coup de grace, and walked by. But here, he's fiddling with the gun. I mean, who knows what the heck he's doing? But he probably spent a lot of time at Chuck E. Cheese, and shooting the balloon, the water into the balloon thing. And this is going to be some guy. He's not a professional. He's got a grudge. I don't know, but I'm not impressed.
But although Chris, admittedly, to Greg's point about the possibility of some other person who benefits staging this to look like something that it isn't, you could hire some person who isn't a professional. You could offer somebody a lot of money and say, do this, but so I'm just saying, I'm totally agnostic about which of these possibilities it is. I don't think it's anything other than those four things that we laid out. If you could think of something else, let me know. But I think those are the four general buckets into which the theories go. But I think we would agree, all of us agree, that whatever went on here, this is not, a James Bond villain, master criminal. The other thing is, Chris, is that this point that's being made about the mask being pulled down. See, I think that's very interesting, because first of all, one thing I want to clarify, because I'm hearing different things about it, is this just him at a hostel where you have to take it down on camera for them to let you stay at the hostel? Or is it part of the flirtation, as people say, that he pulls the mask down? The reason it's important is if you subscribe to the theory that this guy had a personal grudge, then part of the profile you would start to develop, especially given the timing, the Thanksgiving season, that he was here 10 days, all of that, you start thinking of a person that might have lost a loved one to this, who may have had a pre-existing condition and been sitting around suffering, and then they died, right? Something like that. Or, there was a malpractice suit surrounding a loved one, something like that. And what's interesting about it is then you picture a lonely guy who's angry and bitter and wants attention. And then it's the need for that makes him pull the mask down, wanting to flirt, connect with somebody, be attractive, to a female, so that it may be, if it turns out to be a grudge, it may be that the very thing that prompted the offense is what undoes him, with the need for that human connection. It's also interesting to look at what the public is doing, because the public, Kohlberger style, is turning this guy into some kind of anti-hero, They're talking about him as being extremely attractive. He's being compared to people like Jake Gyllenhaal and Timothy Chalamet, who's going to play him in the movie. They call him the sexy assassin. It's ridiculous. They're hoping he doesn't get caught. Why are they doing that? Well, it suggests to me that on some level that they don't really grasp, they're feeding right into the narcissistic heart of such a person and aggrandizing them, giving them attention, so you picture some kind of lonely soul that might have lost somebody, has been bitter about it, demanding attention, and is now getting it in spoonfuls constantly. There are professionals that are fascinated by the case. So you have that same quality that you see in that kind of Koberger thing, where the public is weirdly fixated on this person. And so there's something in this that feels interpersonal from a psychological perspective.
Yeah,
but I think we don't know what's going on. I am totally agnostic. Yeah.
Do you think that this could possibly not have anything to do with insurance at all? It could just be a personal.
It's plausible, but it would have to be somebody that was throwing out some red herrings, playing a game. And but I mean, Chris, one thing that was mentioned on the show that I was actually preparing to talk about, and I was delighted that it came up, because of course, great minds think alike, right? We think of these things, is the idea that they've got to look for emails and letters and calls and even a manifesto from somebody with a grudge. Because if this guy really had a grudge to the point that he wants to kill the CEO of this company, there's no way that he hasn't been popping off about this in multiple places. Wouldn't you suggest, from a law enforcement perspective, looking at social media posts, looking at calls that came in, looking at emails, looking at letters, because this is like a going postal kind of situation, possibly, where there's that period of venting, not being heard, and then getting pushed over the edge. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's back up for a minute, Josh. Let's go to the first shot real fast.
Okay.
Real fast, and I'm going to answer your question, Gary, on that lane. In that lane.
Well, we all get to the same place, one way or another.
Okay. Yeah, let him pull the trigger.
I still can't figure out that firearm.
Okay.
Chris.
Okay, so let's stop right there. Okay, number one, he fires the very first round, okay, and the gun. Everybody, people are saying, well, he's a professional because he knows how to clear a stovepipe. They call us what a stovepipe is when the shell casing lodges into the ejection port. Okay, so they teach you when you fire, you swipe it and you clear it. Okay, well, you can get that at your local gun store. Okay, i.e. that training. So that's not rocket science. The second thing here. He's carrying a backpack with Monopoly money.
Right.
Let's not forget that. When the first round goes off, he's got Monopoly money in his backpack. Okay. This is not the sharpest tool in the shed. Okay. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
You
You think that's some sort of deranged mind?
No, don't go down the psychosis path.
Yeah.
Not deranged. No.
Huh?
Probably not deranged in the way you mean. Not.
Well, I mean, it's not Monopoly money.
Yeah.
He's not nuts, but the elevator doesn't go to the top floor.
Right. Not particularly bright is what you're suggesting. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's carrying Monopoly money in this backpack. That backpack is about $256. Okay. If you look it up online, I think it's called Peak. It's a Peak backpack. Okay. Now, think about the messaging here. He's got a backpack full of Monopoly money in a $256 backpack.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk about, what's mixed messaging here. And so this, again, it goes into, okay, then the first round that goes off, he misses and he hits the guy in the leg and he starts wobbling. And that's because as he starts to advance, he's thinking about the mechanics of the gun. Professionals don't think about the mechanics of the gun. Okay.
That's a good point, Chris.
Professional hits. And number two, a professional would have used a revolver because they don't leave shell casings. Okay. And it probably would have been a 22.
But he wanted to leave casings with messages on them, right?
The same reason he wanted to leave the backpack with the Monopoly money. Okay, the Monopoly money plays into the messaging here, so much so that he's got that he carries it with him, that he takes it to the crime.
Yeah, he certainly didn't buy it afterward. We know the timing. He wouldn't have the time to do it. By the way, Chris, before you answer the question about the looking for gripes online and in letters or whatever, is this guy lefty or righty? Can you tell?
He's a righty.
Definitely. He's right-hand dominant, right?
Yeah. And so everything here is messaging. What else is messaging? Right? Does he leave a phone? Does he not leave a phone? Does he cover his face? Is it covered? Is it not covered? Etc. But this is just going to be one of these guys. I'll put money on it that they already know who he is. I said it on our program with Greg and everybody that this is not going to be a rocket scientist. If this was a professional hit, we wouldn't have these mistakes. This is all part of fantasy. And what's scary about this is it has transferred itself into activism. We've witnessed a murder.
Right.
And social media, to your point, Dr. Brucato, has turned it into a figure of, it's almost like, environment problem, only this is healthcare problem. Let's stand in front of the cars and screw everybody's life up. But in this case, it's okay to witness a murder and not have any feelings for the fact that there are two, kids now without a father. There's a lifelong repercussions. Yeah, was the guy involved in some stuff? I don't know. Let the cops, let the DOJ, let the insurance, let those folks figure it out. But don't take a position where you start eating popcorn and cheering on the murderer. I mean, if that's where we're at as a society, I've got job security.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's kind of where we are at as a society, because I mean, I've seen it everywhere.
Yeah. And then, there will be YouTube channels that will tear this apart, and, we'll be the bad, how dare they have an opinion, or
how
whatever.
Dare they have insurance.
How dare they have an opinion?
They don't seem to mind that this guy might have had an opinion that was acted upon. And
yeah, I mean, that's
more aggressive manner.
I mean, I have an opinion that cold-blooded murder is wrong.
Right.
For whatever reason.
It's like Bloods and Crips, right? I mean, I interviewed Quilly Harvey, and he shot a father with 3 kids right in front of his 3 kids. He was playing baseball. And he walked right up and executed him, shot him right in the head. And I had him in the interview room, and I said, Quilly, why did you shoot that guy? And this was his answer, quote, I didn't like his hat. He was wearing a red hat, and I'm a Crip. Really? Is that what, in your head, that was your justification for shooting this guy? And this is going to be, that kind of punk. He's going to be the guy that says, yeah, well, I had a grudge, or somebody had a grudge, or somebody in my family was grudged, and I don't like the insurance industry, or blah, blah, blah. So I killed the guy.
So you think he's he fancies himself something like Charles Bronson in Death Wish, like a kind of a vigilante?
Well, I think you're giving him too much credit, because Charles Bronson was a very good actor.
Oh, well. But you're implying that he fancies himself somebody who is justified because he's angry at somebody who did a terrible thing to someone else or to millions of people. And so the idea being that he imagined, because that's actually a personality that you see in a certain type of assassin, that they think. We've talked about this, for example, in the Crook's attempt on the former president's life. We talked about that there are some offenders that think I'm doing the world a favor, and if I have to die in the process, I don't care. I'm going to do a sloppy job because I don't care if I die. I'm not looking to escape. I just want to eliminate this bad guy, that a kind of a Robin Hood figure. That's you've seen. It sounds like what you're suggesting, Chris, is that he might have had a fantasy world in which he was a kind of vigilante.
Well, he's got some type of grudge, but here's the problem with that, right? These guys aren't the sharpest tools in the shed. And this is the kind of guy that if there was a busload of 5-year-olds, okay, in the background, he doesn't care where those rounds go. And this is how you end up with, innocent people getting, this is no different. What's the difference of, somebody in the streets of Iraq just pulling a gun and going boom and firing at one guy, or in Detroit or Chicago or whatever. And, they just pull guns and start shooting in the, at the gas station. This is the same kind of mentality. He doesn't care. He's only worried about himself.
That would make him a hypocrite, Chris.
Well, what about a healthcare, salesman, insurance salesman, a low level? I mean, so does he deserve to die too for, they all work for the same company. And essentially what people are saying is that this guy, because he's a symbol of, robbing people is what they're saying, that not paying out insurance, which it does happen. And it happens a lot. And that's, to me, is a different issue, because then you would hold every single person that works for an insurance company that basically you're saying that you're okay with them dying.
Right. Yeah. And, I remember somebody saying something to me about, a dead prostitute one time. And they sent, the gist of it was, and I'm going to paraphrase, was, oh, she was a prostitute.
Right.
And I asked him the question. I said, is the death penalty now for prostitution? Is that the death penalty? And, right? We used to say you don't get to choose your victims. Today's victims, tomorrow's suspect.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many prostitutes' bodies I've stood over. And it would be no different than standing over this, insurance guy and saying to myself, okay, well, he's an insurance guy, a CEO of an insurance company. Well, yeah, is that the death penalty for being the CEO of an insurance company? Is that where, if people think that, they need to look in the mirror. Seriously, as people, they need, if they're saying, well, our system is so screwed up. Yeah, no problem. We get it. Everybody gets it. Okay? Everybody gets it. I mean, my mother died of cancer. I've had cancer. Insurance companies don't like it. They could fix it. I'm sure of it. Okay? But does that mean we get to shoot people now in our society? If that's the case, then you know what? We're rapidly slipping. We're slipping into something that once you get to a certain point, there's no deposit, no return.
Right. But Chris, your point about the arbitrary quality of, that doesn't seem to really care who might get hit, that kind of thing you're talking about. Like if he were on the bus, so there were children, whatever. Well, it's interesting because that would make him a hypocrite. The idea that he's concerned about life not having much of a value to these people, and people put in claims that get denied, and you don't care about them and whatever. That kind of playing God, where you decide who lives and who dies, you'd be something of a hypocrite. Now, of course, this is all a hypothesis because we don't know what this guy's motive is. As I said, I'm not comfortable saying which one is probably true. But Chris, what do you think about that point about in the law enforcement, toolbox, looking for previous documentation of grudges, complaints, letters, calls, whatever? I mean, don't companies generally log things like that? Wouldn't this company have like a whole pile of these from people?
Yeah, their security department will have those kind of situations.
And wouldn't you anticipate this guy doing some writing? Probably right.
He would probably,
right.
Yeah, I mean, if
Or long,
right, I mean, wouldn't you expect a manifesto from this guy of some sort?
or some kind of long-winded, thing about what he was trying to accomplish. Because you see that in those environmental kind of, terrorists. You see it in assassin types. You could see it in spree killers. You could see it in certain mass murderers. Now, one thing I wanted to discuss, because it keeps, I haven't heard it reported out there, but people ask me about it privately, because mass and spree murder are areas of expertise for me. Is they're saying, do you think that there's a chance that this guy is off to the races to kill someone else? Does he have a hit list? Is that, now I have to tell you, I see nothing to suggest that at this time. But I also see nothing that rules it out completely. But my inclination is no. I think this is a highly fixated person looking at one particular person for one reason or another, honed in on a person and obsessively studied him, where he would be, so
It's going to be the same crowd, okay, that burnt down the church across from the White House in 2020. It's the same, the summer of love, right? I mean, I've seen these crowds since the 60s. This is nothing new. And then you hear well, it's a revolution. Okay, what are you revolting against? Honestly,
Insurance companies.
Well, okay. Do you think they care?
No.
Yeah. So go ahead, get out there. I mean, remember Ohio. Neil Young wrote a great song about it. Okay.
I love Young.
Yeah, you know where I'm going.
Favorite of mine.
And this is not. Go read. Go read Karl Marx. Handel. Go get yourself wrapped around it. Okay, but then move to China and just get your social score. See how well it works. And that's the problem here. We have all, my personal opinion, we all have Gethsemanes. Every one of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We all have challenges, we have problems, and we all have adversity. I'm waking up at 4 a.m. to fly to Washington tomorrow morning to talk to a class about, apex predators killing Native American women. Okay. And guess what? Those families have it worse than me, and vice versa. We all have these problems. Mm-hmm. And so, but are we to the point where as a society we say, you know what? Yeah, let's go ahead and kill this guy. Let's sign off on it as a society.
Right.
And then, talk about it and cheer him on, get mask or whatever they're going, whoever they're calling Robin Hoodie or whatever. Okay. Well, okay. And that's going to solve what? Exactly. Do you think the insurance companies aren't going to continue to deny claims?
Well, somebody in the audience said that maybe it's convenient for us to take this position because maybe we can afford premiums that they can't, that kind of thing.
I can't afford the premium.
I just want to say that that's not, that would be kind of missing the point of what we're saying.
So what I mean, so you can't afford the premium, so you kill somebody?
Right. I think it's important to acknowledge that, of course, the health care system is broken. There's no question about it. The medicines are outrageously priced. There's a heavy capitalist quality to it. People die. You put in claims that get rejected for things that really you just cannot afford to deal with, and you must. It's a real thing, but that can't be the solution. What we're railing against is not that people are angry at the healthcare system. We're angry. It's sort of like saying, we think that there should be environmental protections, so we celebrate the Unabomber. That would be kind of ridiculous, right? I mean, you don't blow people up because you have an environmental concern. You separate those 2 points in your mind. I may have a problem with what's going on in the environment, but I also have a problem morally with blowing people up. So I think, Chris, that's an important distinction to make, and Josh, because we're getting kind of lambasted by people who think we're rooting for the insurance company, and this is, of course, not what we're talking about. And then you get these bizarre comments. What did you say?
I'm not rooting for the insurance company.
Exactly. Of course not. Of course not.
But I'm not rooting that the guy needed to die.
Right. Exactly. But I think, Chris, a couple of things that keep coming up that I want to ask you about with your law enforcement background. First of all, they can't find this guy's weapon. They desperately want the weapon. He only has 12 minutes in the park. He obviously has the gun when he goes into the park, and he obviously doesn't have it when he leaves. Where should they be looking?
In the water.
Well, they've been dredging it, and they haven't found it, but
they'll find it
there somewhere.
if it's there. That's probably the most logical place to throw the weapon in there. And I mean, I think a lot of folks are going to be surprised. I mean, right? We all have our stories with insurance. Okay. I mean, every one of you, Josh, you, me, we all do.
My grandmother and grandfather, before my grandfather died, he took, I mean, you know, a few years before he died, I remember them going through this. And when he died, they denied my grandma the insurance. They said that the form was filled out wrong because the employee that was employed at the time that was no longer employed did it incorrectly. And so they refunded her premiums. I mean, that was a terrible situation. Terrible.
Of course.
I didn't go find the guy and kill him.
Right. I mean, so we're saying vigilante justice simply has no place.
I mean, and the fact that people are rooting for it,
it's disturbing. I'm very disturbed by it.
It's like, wow. I mean, yeah, we all hate what's going on. We all do. I mean, I hate it. I've experienced it. You know, I mean, when I buried my son, I was handed a $16,000 bill to bury my own son. And I thought, man, the funeral industry is a ripoff. This is insane.
Yeah, but whether this guy's the CEO or not, it's the same thing. It's not, it doesn't change anything.
Right. Yeah. That's the point. Right. What was I going to do? You know, pull a gun and shoot the guy and say, you guys are making too much money? You know, my mom, and I'm just using my personal experiences of people I don't throw it out there. But, you know, my mother, I mean, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer when I was 12. I mean, do the math. And you know, my daughter, when she was 17, had Guillain-Barré and spent 4 months in the hospital.
Oh, Lord, I didn't know that. That's terrible.
Yeah, she had to learn how to walk. She had to learn how to talk again. She was on a ventilator. She flatlined 10 times one night. I mean, my daughter, to this day, her feet still are, paralyzed. And, you know, and these are the things that I don't run around and tell. I am tonight because you guys invited me on here and we're talking about it. But, you know, we all have a Gethsemane. Everybody has a Gethsemane. My son has Crohn's disease, my oldest son. He has the whole operation, including, you know, the whole thing. Trust me. I've been there, done that as a father. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this guy, okay, what's everybody going to say if it does turn out to be the wife? Then what? Then what? Well, you know, then what? We showed a side of ourselves that we may be not happy with, and we've justified shooting people in the streets and cheered on people that have. Go ahead.
Well, Chris, just to be clear, nobody anywhere has made any accusation against the wife. But I think that what you're suggesting is that there may be someone who benefits
Well,
from.
what if she hired this guy to throw a hit on her husband?
No, I'm saying that's something that's being introduced as a possibility, but it hasn't been said anywhere, to my knowledge.
No.
So you're suggesting that possibility that in doing their due diligence, the law enforcement would have to figure out if there was somebody who might have benefited from the elimination of this person with the use of the environment, the I'm mad at the healthcare system thing as a kind of ruse.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, are we to the point where we want the guy to get run over by the tank in Tenement Square? And everybody go, look, there's one guy out there. And he's standing in front of a tank. Actually, there were 19 of them. And he's going to stop the one tank. I hope they run him over.
Mm.
Are we at that point? I mean, Gary, you're the doctor in the room. I mean, are we at that point where, everybody says the tank in this position would obviously be the insurance company. And if we just shift, or have a paradigm shift for a second in thought process, and the one guy represents all of us.
Right.
Is it okay that the tank run us over and everybody cheer?
Well, to get to one of the comments that somebody's made in the chat and keeps making because they're frustrated we're not answering it, is they're making a comparison between this and a kind of a political situation where you view an individual or a party like a warring faction that you're fighting against, as if this could be comparable, let's say, to what's going on in Syria, where people are overthrowing the regime there, right? So they take a act of war, or a person who's acting as if they are in a war or an army or a terroristic act, and they make it comparable or analogous to an individual who decides to be a kind of Robin Hood figure and go out and wage, a personal war against it. So the logic that people like that have is they're saying, well, maybe it's more like somebody needs to do this to bring about good change. Like, these are the kind of people who will say something like, oh, well, depending upon your perspective, weren't the founding fathers terrorists, in the way that they fought against England, and the weaponry they used and the cruelty and the explosives and it's a kind of toying with perspective to justify something. I don't think that's a fair comparison. What this is an individual who might be laboring under some kind of lofty kind of idea, but it's simply an expression probably of some interpersonal grudge, which is, kind of being used as a kind of a superficial justification for a need for attention and narcissistic gratification and the playing out of fantasy, and everybody's feeding right into it.
What if it's one of the board of directors that hired somebody?
Who knows?
Well, that's the thing. We're arguing, like, and I'm not just saying us, but like the people in chat and other shows that I've seen. We're arguing about something that may not even be the case here. We don't know.
Right.
We don't even know why he killed him. We're just assuming it's because he works he's the CEO of an insurance company. We don't even know that. I mean, and even if
he projected pretty clearly with the lettering on the shell casings, with the monopoly money,
right.
I mean,
can somebody talk about the monopoly money a little bit? Because sure. I'm not really understanding that.
I have no idea. I mean, I heard one of the comments in the chat when I talked about this a little bit ago was that, they monopolize the industry, the healthcare industry. Okay. And that the monopoly money was, according to the person, symbolic of that. I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. But what if it's a board member and he was worried that this guy was going to testify against him and throw him under the bus? And what if it's an inside, quote, board hit? And then again, you've got, the other theory is you got, the relationship problem. What if that relationship was the hit. Okay. Remember the guy was going in front of DOJ and they were going to grill him. So he was going to this meeting to kind of calm everybody down.
Right.
And he doesn't make it.
So deny, defend, depose were some words on the casings.
Right.
And I mean, I'm trying to see what else was on the casings.
Well, that might suggest somebody that had a malpractice suit.
Well, that's the title of the book.
Well, it's slightly different than it, but two of the words I think are the title of the book, but one word's off. But I think it's because it's just a phrase that's used to describe like how they deny claims. But it's also a phrase that's used, I think, to describe the defense that's used by insurance companies, and I think the depose meaning like what, depositions that you would give in a legal setting, or but I think the idea is that there might have been somebody who, look, let's just entertain the hypothesis that this is a grudge. What could we guess about this? First of all, there are a couple of little things that may be overreading, but I think are interesting. There's a person who scurries away from the shooting. I think it's a woman. He doesn't shoot her. We know that he's flirtatious with a woman, with the mask being pulled down. Seems to like women. And I wonder if the person that might have died, or that he might have loved, or that he might have lost, might have been a woman, a mother, for example. That's interesting to me. The second thing that's interesting to me is the idea that even though there's a cold-bloodedness to this guy, he seems to have a need for human connection and to be sensitive to loss, which makes him different than a calculating lizard. Makes him more like a guy who got angry and paranoid and kind of feels like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, that kind of thing. Then you have the timing of it, right around Thanksgiving, a time that activates lonely people. We talked about that, Chris, on the interview room, about how the time of year is really important. We talked about that on your John Bonet episode, right? Maybe Thanksgiving set him off. Why didn't he have family to be with? Was it the only person he had in his entire life who died? Right? And you wonder, psychologically, where does this idea come from of the big company that's supposed to take care of somebody walking away from us? Was he mad at a dad who didn't provide, who walked away, who left mom in the dust? Who knows? But it's psychologically interesting to think about the symbolism of it all. And I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out to be some guy with a family drama where a person that they really, really cared about is gone or nearly gone, and they're mad at this big paternal company, that didn't care about anybody, and they want to go out and get revenge and settle the score. And a lot of the sloppiness is related not only to not being the sharpest tool in the shed, probably, or whatever, but also to it not having too much of a practical significance, because I don't know if he cared that much about his own life. I think this guy, he's on the run and whatever, but the idea is he achieved his purpose. And I'm not sure he cares very much. He might be, for example, a very depressed guy. Now, one of the questions that people keep asking me is, do you think this guy's going to kill himself? Well, I looked at cases in my databases and everything. And I can tell you that based on what I have seen in previous cases is I wouldn't be surprised if he killed himself if cornered rather than get captured. But I'm not so sure we can say that he would wind up committing suicide. But that's the type that tends to run and then let themselves be, not let themselves be taken, that kind of thing, because they feel like they're in an army or they're in a cause. They're fighting for a cause, Now, this is all wild speculation, but these are hints that we get about the flavor of the psychology here. There's also something very childish and kind of sad about a board game and Monopoly and the whole thing. I mean, when I think of Monopoly, even though it's all about corporate greed and whatever, I think about sitting around the table playing it with family. And, it's, you can walk away with all the money in your bag, but you're all by yourself at the top of the pile, And so I think the center of this guy is anger, sadness, paranoia, and loneliness. And it's loneliness that did him in with pulling that mask down.
I mean, a lot of
thing. It's an arc of loneliness.
It seems like he's sending some symbolism of soul.
Reeks of it. Yeah.
And he's kind of leaving hints, but and somebody just made a great point. Maybe he could be, everything that we're saying is speculation and just theories and thoughts about this. I mean, he could be terminally ill, been turned down through this medical, through this insurance company. He could have been hired by somebody.
You mean that would explain the not caring very much about how sloppily this was done.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem, I'm no expert in any of this, but it doesn't really seem professional. I just don't see, I mean, you got a guy his face is everywhere now. And for some reason, I just have this feeling that they're onto him, like in a major way.
Oh, I think they know who he is.
Yeah, and they probably have an idea of the area that he could possibly. I just think that they're. No. What's it been now? About 5 days since this has happened, and I mean,
facial recognition technology. The guy was so clearly seen. I mean, did you see what they did with the January 6th protesters? Mobs of people. They were able to identify people whose faces.
Yeah, they do. The Knicks use that to keep people out. That the New York Knicks and the Mets and I think the Yankees. They do that facial recognition too to make sure that people that have been banned from the park or the arena don't come back. So, I mean that stuff is out there. Chris, how many? I heard you talk a little bit about it on the Interview Room, and if you haven't, make sure to check out the Interview Rooms.
Yeah, it was great.
It was a fantastic show. How many agencies did you say are involved in this? Because it seems like this is a massive manhunt.
Well, you've got the feds, you've got the U.S. Marshals, you got ATF, you got NYPD, various squads, you've got homicide, you've got the Fugitive Task Force, you've got the Real-Time Crime Center, and the list goes on. I hate to say this, and I hate to throw water on everybody's party, but this person is not even a challenge. Right? They're not a challenge.
Yeah, he's toast, Chris. Yeah, this guy's toast. He's getting.
We may wake up in the morning and he or she, and I'm not convinced. You look at some of these pictures, looks like almost like feminine, right? I mean, one of the pictures where you can't. When I first saw it, I was like, "Is that a dude or is that a woman?"
Yeah, it must. Hold on.
But I don't know. Everybody, yeah, that picture right there.
Yeah, maybe he's got manicured eyebrows.
I don't know. I mean,
I've had my eyebrows waxed, to be honest with you. Don't tell me.
Maybe it's Koberger again with his fluffy eyebrows. I don't know. I'm teasing. That just kind of round up your. I'm sure the audience is going to get mad again. But I'm sure it's a dude. But based on the other photos, if you look at the other photo, Josh, what's the other one? Looks more like a male characteristics, but this kind of femme, looking, and again, this person's going to be that person that says, yeah, I hate the insurance industry, and it's going to be like, these are the same people that glue themselves to the streets, and attach themselves with the metal bars between them.
Mm-hmm. But to answer that, I think though that it's a little more complicated in the sense that I agree with you that that's the most likely supposition based on the evidence. But it's interesting that it seems to be a kind of justification for playing out something personal, being aggrieved and depressed, hopeless, mad at someone, whatever. And then you give it that kind of quality of seeming like a social cause, so you have a right to act out on it.
I think everybody. I don't know, Gary. My read's going to be, and I'm probably wrong, but my read's going to be he's sitting around, drinking a latte right now with all his friends.
Well, he's probably under surveillance. I cannot imagine they don't know who this guy is.
And they're
This is
going,
a lot.
all
This
the
is a lot.
friends going, dude, you did it. You
This is
did
a
it.
lot. And I'm sitting
did
with
it.
my friends.
Right? A McFluff. They're all sitting around, you know. I mean, think about it. Where did he go in the morning? He went to Starbucks. Had to get his McFluff.
I'm not so sure he has a lot of friends, but
Every time Chris calls me, I'm in line at the coffee shop. Like, what are you doing? Getting a McFluff? It's almost every
hanging out at the, you know, the Antifa crowd, you know, the hey, we got away with it, you know, yada yada. Okay, yeah, sure. Only there are going to be machine guns coming through the windows here pretty soon. You know, and home fries at that point is going to just shrink. It'll be nothing.
I agree. I remember once I was interviewed by somebody about Andrew Cunanan, the spree killer Andrew Cunanan. Remember him, the guy who killed Versace?
Versace, yes.
Yes. And somebody said when he was sitting in that hotel room and he saw that he was on the most wanted list and he was getting scared and getting holed up. And what do you think was going through his mind? And I remember I said, he probably thought to himself, wow, I'm the most wanted. Right. Well, that's the thing about this kind of guy. That's what you want to bear in mind. That thing of being the most wanted, it hits on a personal, familial, psychological level, but it looks like they're playing something else out. I think that whatever's going on with this guy, the center of it is something that has to do with the family, loss, anger at somebody who took somebody from him or doesn't care about loved ones or whatever, isolation. And there's a kind of a pathetic guy here. I don't look at this guy and think he's a cold-blooded, you know, psychopath that would just go around randomly killing people. This is not a serial killer. This is a guy who's mad about something. Actually, he looks a lot more like mass murderers and spree killers in what appears to be going on here. I'm surprised, Chris, that he didn't take a weapon into the whole meeting and kill a lot of the people that were there. He looks more like that kind of guy, but he didn't.
That's remember, this is pre-incident. That smile right there. He's in New York City to kill a guy, and he's like, yeah, can I get a double latte McFluffy? You know, with whipped cream.
I don't get whipped cream.
Yeah, sure. Hey, what brings you to New York? I'm just here to whack a CEO from United Healthcare.
Yeah, and he was there for what, 10 days prior?
Yeah, hanging out at the hostel, talking about all their trips to Europe.
It's a weird place.
Yeah, I backpacked barefoot. Yeah. Okay. And I
hostel.
Well, this is the guy that sets the slack up in the back of the hostel. The between trees to impress everybody. Whoa, hey, that guy's pretty good. Where are you from? Atlanta. Oh, wow. We got a lot of trees down there. Yeah, the same people, they hug the tree, they build the platform. I'm not coming down for another 30 days. Okay. Enjoy it. We'll be down here when you're ready. Yeah, that's who this guy's going to be. I'm telling you that's just my read on the guy.
Very surprised if they didn't already know who he is. I mean, Chris, they can process DNA now in like an hour. I mean, this guy doesn't seem to have worn gloves. He's firing a gun with no gloves. I mean, there's got to be DNA all over the place. And, in that bag on the Monopoly money and so I just kind of feel like, again, it speaks to somebody that either isn't very bright or really doesn't care what happens to them because they've lost everything in their mind. So come and get me, So I don't.
He doesn't. He's not in the system. He's not in the system. He's like, well, they won't find me because I'm not in the system. Okay.
Easy with facial recognition. I mean, Chris, they can use photographs from ID cards at places you've worked, schools you've attended, social media. It's not difficult with facial recognition, and his face is pretty distinct.
Well, yeah, and I've even heard people say, that he's wearing a mask or whatever here, like that this face is, who knows if that's true. But Merge says here, and I somewhat agree with this, is that he wants to tell his story. He wants to tell his story. And
Well, I'm expecting writing.
right, yeah, that's I. So you think that if not a manifesto, like remember like the Virginia Tech shooter, he made all those like home videos and was airing his grievances and mailing them to news organizations and stuff like that. You
He
think
wants
that
to be heard. Right. He's making a point at a very big cost.
yeah. And do we know the nature of this? Why his mask is down here?
Supposedly, it's because he's flashing a smile at a woman who works at a hostel he's being flirtatious with. As one of the one expert said, quoting the movie King Kong, "'Twas beauty killed the beast." That kind of thing, right? That he can't resist that need for. That could suggest narcissism. That could suggest loneliness. It's also possible that this is just standard procedure, that he's got to show his face to stay. Right? I mean, so I think we have to get to the bottom of that. But all I know is, if he had to take his mask down for standard procedure, first of all, I don't think he would have looked like that. He probably would have been nervous to do it. He would have made a more serious face. He would have tried to turn a certain way, whatever. This is a person who's caught up in some kind of interpersonal moment where, they're, boldly flashing a smile. So Chris, the other thing I want to ask you is, I can't seem to get a clear answer on is, what the heck kind of gun is that?
Well, there's what they call a B&T, and it's a knockoff of a World War II gun that the Churchill would give his SAS guys, and it was an old spy gun. But there's a company called B&T that has the same kind of weapon today, and it's a 9mm with an extension on it with a silencer piece at the end. But the gun itself, it can carry a 17 magazine, 16 in one.
You're talking about the like a modernized well rod?
Yeah, like well rod was a World War II gun.
Right. Because one of the things I heard this evening, in fact, I think I read it when you were live on the interview room, is that the police are looking into whether what this actually was, and this is really out there if it is, was that he was using a gun that is used by vets to euthanize animals rapidly.
Well, that's the B&T.
Well, that's so. Is that the idea that it would be a regular firearm that you're using, or is it modified in some way?
No, it's not modified. They use it to put down big game.
Now, if it's an animal that's used, if it's a weapon used for euthanasia of animals, there could also be some disturbing symbolism in the use of the weapon, right?
Yeah,
I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to help you with your health condition, so we're going to let you die, right? Kind of like you would say with an animal. Let's just put it down, that kind of thing. Rather than let this be drawn out. There's also a creepy symbolism in the idea of shooting a person and thinking of them as an animal. So that I wonder about that because it's a weird. Is it? Do you agree? It's a kind of strange weapon choice.
Well, it all depends what it is. I mean, if it's a B&T, then then he did a little homework. I mean, the guy's done some homework. I don't think any of us can disagree with that.
I think he's been to a shooting range or played a lot of video games where he had to learn how to. Because you mentioned the Weaver stance and some things. I mean, where could he learn that?
Well, you learn that at your local indoor gun range. You can go in there and ask the instructor, say, hey, I want to shoot a pistol or whatever. Okay, well, what are you thinking? And they let you choose a gun and you can buy your own ammo. And then they say, okay, we'll come down here to lane 4. Let's get the fundamentals down. Okay. And the biggest clue that the fundamentals aren't down is the very first shot. A professional shooter, if you're going to hit the 5 ring or the 10 ring, okay, the center mass, but he's trying to aim for the center of his back. Okay. But the very first round that goes off, again, he overcorrects himself. And what happens is you look at his arm there, see how it's kind of like a U?
Yeah.
Okay, that right arm should be locked out. Okay. If you'll see a professional shooter like anybody on a SWAT team or any, special forces guys, any military training, they start here and they go out here. Sorry, I hit the mic. They go boom, straight out. And you want to lock.
Right.
Okay. This is a professional. Okay. And then their line of sight down here, straight here. Okay. This is an amateur.
Huh.
Okay.
And that's because of the recoil.
Say it again, Josh.
And the reason you lock your arm like that is because of the recoil.
Yeah. And plus, it puts you better target acquisition.
Better aim. Yeah.
Right. And I wish we could find that one video where it actually shows him get shot.
I don't think we're allowed to play it.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, I've never.
Everybody's playing it. I don't know.
Oh, really?
I don't want to jeopardize your channel. That's for sure.
Chris, is there a suppressor on it? Is there a silencer on it?
There's a suppressor on it.
Which is illegal, right?
It all depends what state you're in.
Well, he's in New York, so.
Right.
So quite rare.
Guns are illegal.
Yeah, you don't even want guns. Remember when Plexico Burris, the wide receiver, shot himself in the leg and then went to jail for like 18 months for it?
Yeah.
Talk about insult to injury, right? I think about that sometimes, and I just go, sometimes like it's like he shoots himself, but then they put him in jail for gun charges.
Right.
Well, if he was in the military or had some, law enforcement training in any way, then he would have been a much better shot, and he wouldn't have stood the way that he stood. He took the old Weaver stand, and the Weaver stance is an old police stance, and it's not even the military used to train. Man, I hit my mic again. Sorry, Josh.
That's all right.
The military used to train, sideways, straight out. Okay, like this. Okay, then they went to a modified, where your feet are kind of like this, and that's called a Weaver stance, and that's what he's standing in. You see his feet. It's kind of like this and like this. That's a regular, run of the mill. Hey, you want to learn how to shoot? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get your Weaver stance down here and let's get your knees, get them in the proper place. Okay. And then I need you to get up here a little. Okay. But you see his shoulders to the left, his arms bent like this, and he's coming out like this. Okay. That's not how you shoot. And that's why the very first round that goes off is what he's doing is he's pushing the gun. He's pushing it instead of coming from here, out, lock, boom, fire. Just go watch any SEAL Team 6 videos or whatever those guys are amazing. If you want to learn how to shoot, just go watch those guys. They don't do any of this garbage.
Anybody have any thought on this? And I do kind of understand exactly what this person's saying. The insult to this is that no matter what the motive is, average Joe gets an NYC detective first 48, and the CEO gets NYPD, FBI, U.S. Marshals. I get that this is all being broken down into sort of like classism, I guess you could say, but
right.
Why the big response? Is it because of who he is, or the brazenness of the attack, or that this guy is dangerous? Obviously he's armed and dangerous as well, so he could potentially, and Dr. Gary, you spoke about this a little bit, I mean, he could be after others. You just don't know. We
don't know, but I tell you that when I look at this guy, the one thing that bothers me, well, many things do, but one thing that jumps out as upsetting about the notion of him being some sort of warrior for the poor, is that he's wearing an expensive bag. He went to Starbucks. He's got that, he's like an emblem of capitalism, but he's like supposed to be standing for the
It's exactly
right, like, oh, down with the rich, but look at that bag is like an insult to people who are poor. You know what I'm saying? You know what you could do with that bag? I like to donate money to the Bowery Mission. I'm a very, very big fan of the Bowery Mission for the homeless, especially at Thanksgiving, Christmas. Think about them. And they'll tell you that for like every $2.50, every $3, you could feed a person, right? So like, think of how many people you could feed with that bag if you didn't buy that bag. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about dinner for 100 people. That's what I'm saying. Like, this is no, hero going down to the poor. And then you have this ridiculous, kind of thing of the whole world being after him, and he's like the most wanted man, and the whole thing. It is kind of annoying. I agree with you, because there are a lot of awful things happening. It's sort of like the disparity in, who gets all the media attention, how there are racial disparities and economic disparities, and, there seem to be two justice systems in terms of outcomes. Yeah,
Well,
it's a lot of unfairness being played out, paradoxically. Well, ironically, I should say.
Well, and as it says here, missing the point, not referring to the shooter at all. I get what you're saying. The answer to that is I don't know. None of us can answer that question. It's high profile. That's why. Other than that, I don't know. And I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying anything. I don't even disagree with what you're saying. I just don't. I just don't know the answer.
But I think, Chris, wouldn't you agree that in many ways, this is a garden variety shooting? It's just that the victimology makes it unusual and high profile. But otherwise, this wouldn't be getting this attention. It's who got killed.
And it's where. And it's the time. And it's the brazenness of it. How.
And sort of in the climate as well. The climate of, like you said, there are people behind this, because people have been screwed over by insurance companies many times, and they go, you know what? There's a marker for us, but he doesn't. He doesn't represent you. He really doesn't.
Look at what people are complaining about. The price of the bag, $270. Some are saying that's not expensive, and others are saying, yeah, it is. And it's, look at the representation of this guy. First, think about it. He takes a bus. Okay. Now that could be one of two reasons, right? He's trying to lay, a low profile. So he figures, okay, if I take a bus, pay cash, I'm good to go. Okay. But what he forgets is every one of those buses has a camera on it. So he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Number one.
Let me cook here for a second. I do know who he is representing, and if you want him to represent you, God bless you. But you would be being represented by a cold-blooded killer. Congratulations. Right, sorry.
Right.
The second thing is, he takes the bus to Manhattan. Okay. Number one, okay, there's the reason he's there is what? He's there to kill a guy. Okay, so he gets there 10 days earlier. But, he ends up staying at a maybe a $30 a night hostel with a whole bunch of other people that, you have a lot in common with. Okay. He makes the mistake of pulling down his mask or whatever.
Right.
At some point, he's got to get, either he had the weapon prior and you can, kind of sneak it up onto the bus. I don't know how that one worked. But, and then he goes to business. He's got to pack we forget that Monopoly money came from somebody or somewhere. Right. He had to buy it. So how many Monopoly games did he buy to get all that Monopoly money? Okay, and stuff it into the bag. So they're tracking all that stuff. They found the bag. They're looking at the RN number. They found a jacket. They're looking at the RN number, and they're finding out where that was distributed.
Uh-huh.
And so the guy is not the sharpest tool in the shed. He's a symbolism of something. What is that symbolism
Right.
of? Okay, grudge against insurance companies. Okay, well, you know what? They're paying $7 a gallon in California for gas. Okay, so what is that a justified cause?
Yeah, going after like the ExxonMobil CEO or
You know, we had 12 years to live before the planet would be eliminated. Didn't we all see the movie? Didn't you see the movie? You know, and we had 12 Al Gore, 12 years. You got 12 years. Okay. 15 years later, we're still here and we're still moving.
yeah.
Okay. But think about it. They were really believing in 12 years that Manhattan's going to be underwater. Well, apparently Manhattan's not underwater. They're killing people in Manhattan. Okay. And think about the symbolism there. He buys a $270 bag, stuffs it with Monopoly money. Okay, but he had to think through this. Okay, I got to get the Monopoly money, and that's going to be symbolic of something, and I'm going to stuff it in this $270 bag. Yeah, it's not a lot of money, but I'm going to stay at a $33 a night hostel, and I'm going to ride an electric bike. Okay, and I'm going to get this burner phone. I'm going to be on it with somebody or something. And there's my target. And I've gone to, the local gun store and learned how to shoot this thing. And now I'm going to take him out. And then I'm going to walk by real casual, I'm going to give him a coup de grace in the chest, which that apparently was the kill shot. Because all the other shots weren't kill shots. The one that killed him was the one in the chest. But more importantly, I'm going to shoot the guy in the back. Okay, before I do anything else, I'm going to shoot the guy in the back. I don't want him to look at me. I'm going to shoot him in the back like a real coward.
Right.
Okay, but I've got a cause. And then when I'm done, I'm going to run across the street, jump on my e-bike, and I'm going to take it to Central Park, and I'm going to drop the bag and get on a bus and go back to Atlanta, and nobody's going to know it was me.
Right, but Chris, there's one thing in that story that no one seems to be mentioning, which is the possibility that he came 10 days before not to do surveillance on the specific person, but with the idea that he was going to hone in on someone that represented whatever he was mad about, found out that this conference was happening there at the hotel, and then selected a in other words, it's entirely possible that he picked New York because it was full of rich capitalists, and he was going to hone in on one as a symbol. But so far, the speculation is in the direction of that he picked this guy even before he got on the bus. But isn't it entirely possible that this guy became an emblem, that he got here, loped around for 10 days, lonely, kind of miserable, and picked a target? Think, for example, of Cunanan. Cunanan wanted to kill McDonough. And when it didn't work out, he killed Versace because he got the idea in his head that he wanted to kill a famous person. He didn't get who he wanted, so he killed someone else. I mean, so it is possible that it was more about what the guy symbolized than him specifically. I mean, there is a 10-day window, Chris. And, no one knows. Right.
And that leans more towards amateur.
Dr. Brucato, here's a question for you. I'm frantically looking at the new evil index. I was late to this live. Where would this guy fall in the categories? Thank you.
It's a more sophisticated question than it might seem, because it depends on the motive. If the motive was that he saw himself as a vigilante for a cause, he wouldn't go on the scale, because the scale does not assess people who are essentially terrorists or vigilantes or assassins associated with political movements or causes, who see themselves as part of an army of some sort, right? So you don't rank people like that on the scale. What happened, John?
I'm trying to fix something.
Oh boy, you're missing. Okay. Two little Indians. Oh, you're gonna join? Okay. So I think that he wouldn't be ranked there. Now, if it turns out that he just had a grudge and wanted to kill someone or whatever, he's not a serial killer. He's not a repeat offender. So the highest score that he could potentially get would be 16, right? You know you're dealing with somebody that can't be any higher than that because he's not a repeat killer. And I suspect that what we're going to find is that this is a person who was motivated really ultimately by anger and inadequacy in the personality, who had some individual in his life that was basically all he had, lost that person, and then went out to make meaning out of an empty life with this huge act of aggression. And those people tend to fall somewhere in category 8 or category 13, depending upon, how nasty, how cruel, so forth. But there's certainly the premeditation, hints of some of the cruelty, the inadequacy of personality that we'd see somewhere there. 8 or 13 would be my strong guess of where this guy is going to go, which makes me think that inadequacy in the personality and in the surrounding supports is going to be critical to this story. But what happened to Josh? It's so funny. He's just gone.
He's there. He's at the top.
Oh, Lord, you melded in like a chameleon or something. You just moved. It was kind of strange.
Most people noticed me pretty fast. I just
so Chris, Josh, we were originally going to do a call-in show, and that's changed. Right now, we're just going to stick to this, and
we're sticking to this. Yeah,
okay. Because it'd be a pretty heated call-in show. And one thing I did want to make sure we said before we ended, which is sort of unrelated but very important, I think, is. Yesterday was Sebastian Rogers' birthday.
Yes.
And I think given all the talk that we do, all three of us do about Sebastian Rogers, I think it's a really good opportunity to kind of pause and put the attention where it belongs in that case, because there's been so much heat about that case. Josh, you know this. Chris, you know this. And I just kind of think for a moment we should pause and say, let's remember that kid. Wherever he is, right, in heaven or somewhere on earth, I really think we got to send our hearts out to that kid. And he would have been 16, right?
16.
Yeah. How long has he been missing?
I think it's 9 months, going on 10.
Well, that's not very auspicious in terms of them finding him, right, Chris? That's a really bad sign, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you, there was an update yesterday that Seth did, and where he said that his faith has been renewed in the search efforts. What he's heard.
Really?
Yes.
You mean the possibility that he is somewhere, that he has been abducted and is somewhere? You mean is what you're saying?
I mean, I don't. They didn't go into it specifically. There was a little 2-minute segment if you want me to play it.
Well, it's extremely interesting, but because I've been amazed at the heat that people take about this case. They get really passionate about it, and I just wanted to kind of put the focus back on that because I think it gets lost in all the talk that this is a kid who's gone and people are heartbroken and his birthday and let's just kind of remember that. I mean, wouldn't you echo that, Chris? That's where the victim focus is where we've got to be, and it's in that vein that it's horrifying to hear people rooting for somebody that killed Brian Thompson.
That guy right there, that guy is the most important person.
Oh, there you go.
Piece of this puzzle right now.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear
the other two, the game players or whatever, and all the other. I mean, if we're cheering on shooting CEOs in New York, does it surprise you that people are cheering on, people that, number one, you can't leave the house. I've said this from day one. Don't leave the house because that's the place or the, whatever the latest video is at the Texas Roadhouse. Maybe there's another person and it's a handoff or whatever the deal is going to be. Either way, okay, that young man is missing, period.
Yeah.
And the cops ran into, they've run into friends who are lawyers, and the lawyers are, doing all their little games, and that's what they do. But doesn't that tell you everything you need to know? I mean, you can defend it all, not us, but people can defend it all day long. But, it's just a matter of time. God will provide. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm gonna play this just for a minute and we can have a little bit of
Yeah, this is very interesting. This is the first time hearing this.
Last 9 months, law enforcement has scaled back searches for Sebastian Rogers to an investigative format. The FBI has also offered a reward for information. Recently, Dog the Bounty Hunter joined the search and raised the reward amount, all while Sebastian's biological father continues his search efforts. News 2's Audrey Mayer speaks exclusively with his father and tells us where the investigation stands.
On December 7th, Sebastian Rogers' 16th birthday, his father Seth says a recent meeting with law enforcement has restored his confidence in their case.
Today, they have renewed my faith that they are definitely focusing on bringing my son home.
Seth didn't give any details on what was said in their meeting. Sebastian was last seen on February 26th in Hendersonville, nearly 10 months ago. The reward for information on Sebastian's whereabouts increased last month up to $200,000.
I thank the public for the support that they are giving me, and they continue to. Keep your eyes open. You could be the next person that might see him.
Seth says he won't ever stop searching and saying his son's name. Until he's found, the pain of not knowing where Sebastian is fills Seth with grief.
Today is a lot of sadness. It's a lot of sadness every day. It's hard to wrap your head around it. All right. Every day, it's like, get that phone call, waiting for that picture, waiting for information that my son has been found.
Sebastian's 16th birthday, Seth says he hopes families spend time with their kids. He fondly remembers birthdays with Sebastian jumping in the pool, having water balloon fights, and eating cake. What is it like for you looking back on those memories today?
I'm not done making them.
Yeah.
Looking back is nice, but looking forward to him being back is better.
I reached out to the Sumner County Sheriff's Office about Sebastian Rogers. They told me there's still an active and ongoing investigation. And if you know anything about this case, to contact them. We have ways you can send tips listed up on our website. Kenley?
For the last night.
So, it sounds it sounds like there's some positivity there, that he has a renewed faith, that law enforcement is working this case and working it hard, and God bless him for speaking, with him. That's a tough thing, it's just a tough thing to be left in the dark. And sometimes, in those investigations, Chris and Dr. Gary, you both know, sometimes it's necessary while the investigation's going on. I mean, you can't afford leaks. You can't afford information, being spread and twisted. And, we see a lot of that all the time with investigations. Chris, any thoughts on that?
I think there's a digital footprint, and they've done a geofencing around the entire area, and they're going, who belongs to this, who belongs to this, who belongs to that. And then they're starting back to go back to the restaurant. You see mom on the phone. Okay, well, you can, the moment you get that tab, for lack of a better term, you know exactly where it goes and how it gets there. And it's the same with the other one. And, again, we go back to 15-year-olds. If he's at the house, they don't just disappear. Human beings do not disappear. They just don't. There is a reason why, they're no longer seen. There are reasons for it. And, the first, in my opinion, I've said this publicly many times, the investigators need to come out, and I'll say it again. If the father's cleared, clear him. Tell the public he's done. He's out. He was at work. He's on video, which he is. I believe it.
Well, Chris,
go ahead.
I did an interview with Seth, and we talked about that a little bit. This was probably about a month ago, maybe less, 3 weeks ago. And according to Seth, he said, yeah, they went and verified that he was at work after they tossed his house. They tossed his house the first day, which is normal. That's due diligence. You have to do it. He gave them consent to do it, and that's what they did. And then, they said, well, we're going to go verify that you were at work. And I said, did they verify? And he said, yes. And I said, they told you that? And he said, yes, they did. But they never publicly stated that. But
and that's a mistake.
I don't disagree.
Because, and then the next thing, personally, I'd go back to the other 4 wives and flush them hard.
Does Chris find it odd?
Tell me what it was like living with this person. Huh?
That they have not received do you find it odd that they haven't received all the electronics back from LE?
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming they've got all the electronics back. If they're just waiting to do it, then yeah, I find that odd.
I think she might be talking about that they haven't given them back to the.
Well, they're going to keep that. They're going to keep that stuff under their hat, and they should. But the public has, the technology that's available. Okay, you can pretty much. You're seeing a little of it come out in the Koberger thing. I'll guarantee you what's going to happen in the Koberger thing with Cy, from the defense. He knows.
I don't think he's a perfect dad, but clear him, duck on it. I don't know any perfect dads. I've never met one.
No, and I've never known a perfect husband who had 5 wives.
That is a medieval amount of wives to have.
Well, you got to think about that. People are complaining about Seth, and saying, yeah, you gotta go take a hard look at Seth. Okay, yeah, no problem. Let's take a hard look at Seth. But here's another one. Okay, how many wives did the guy have? 5.
Well,
let's take a harder look at the 5 wives, because the 5 wives, 4 of them, the 5th one's still with him. The four are going to tell you, hey, I need to tell you something. Really? What? Oh, number 1. How about you? Number 2? Did any of this? Oh, yeah. How about you? Number 3. Now think about this. We got 1 Seth, and we're already into 3 wives, and we haven't even hit the 4th one yet. Okay. Well, don't you think we should be talking about them? Let's go find out what they say. Oh, wait a minute. We did. And one of them came forward and said A, B, C, and D. Okay. That's a problem. Okay. That's a problem. Okay. And you know what? That information will be flushed out soon enough. I'm sure of it. Any good investigator knows, there's so much. You solve so many crimes with ex-wives. I can't put a number on it. But
yeah, well, and the funny thing about that too is that if you sort of broach that subject, and say, because for some reason there is this, you're on this side or you're on that side type situation, and it seems there were a lot of that in the Summer Wells case as well. The Wells had their defenders, and whatever. I mean, I don't care about who anybody wants to defend, but the past matters. Interactions with others matter. The way that people treat other people matter, especially when you're looking into a case like this. I'm not accusing anybody of anything because I don't know, but if you could say one thing about Seth, but you could also counter it with a million other things from on the other side, and you could go back and forth until one side keeps going. And I think that there may be more on one side than the other. That's just my personal opinion, and take that how you want.
Women are very intuitive, and quite frankly, they're a lot smarter than men. And I mean that in all sincerity, because I've solved more cases with women than I have, trying to figure out what the guy was doing. Okay? Because the women will tell you, don't trust that dude. Well, why? Just trust me. I got a 7th sense sixth sense. It's beyond the sixth sense. Okay. And I can't tell you how many cases I solved. And Gary knows who Porter.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
A serial killer. I had a girl. Her name was Frederica Goldstein. And Freddie, if you're listening, I'm telling your story. Freddie gets picked up. She's a prostitute. And long story short, she gets beat up behind a bowling alley by this guy, by a guy. And she was like, dude, this guy tried to choke me. He tried to this, he tried to that. And, McDonough, he's driving this kind of car. And it was a small MG. And I said, are you sure? She looked right at me. She goes, I am positive. And I said, you're sure? Okay. I get it. Okay. And fast forward. Okay. No matter what, just because, this person is wearing this persona of, I'm working the streets at 3 o'clock in the morning because I have a drug problem. I've been trying to kick the needle, we used to call it chasing the pipe. I'm trying to get off, blah, blah, blah. They're still human beings. Okay. And they still have a mother. They still may have a father. They may have a brother, a child, a sister, whatever. They're human beings. They have a human connection to this earth. Okay. If detectives can look past that and listen, okay, those women will tell you stories about the world, reality in the world. And if we go back to the 4 wives and say, what's your reality with this personality that you've experienced there? Okay. They will tell you. And now you may not like it or think, okay, well, how am I going to connect all these dots? Okay. But if in any way, shape, or form they've been the victim of abuse, either physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, all of those are abuse. Okay. If they're not handled correctly by one, the human spirit to the next human spirit, they will tell you 100% what happened. And guess what? Believe them. Okay. Now, there are other situations where you just know, I'm not sure about that one, right? Because the meth has kicked in and they're taking apart their toasters and their bicycles and, the front yard has 5 or 6 washing machines in it with, 10 or 15 cars missing all the tires. I was on the res the last week. I was out, trying to find a witness. And I mean, this whole place was just like, cattle head and, just craziness, right? Just totally strung out. And then there was a one little, I have to laugh. It was a camera set up with a solar system on it. And it says, you're being watched. And I'm thinking, I wonder how much, was going on really into that one, okay, that day. But I don't want to digress. Where I was going with this, if you listen to what these people talk about and how they talk about it, and I'm talking about exes, okay, especially when it's violence to that ex or a child of that ex, Mama Bear becomes a grizzly quickly. And they will protect that child. And when they come out and say, no, he did it to me. I told him, don't you ever do it to her or to him. And then he did it to her. That was it. I'm done. And guess what? Those relationships separate for a reason. It's not because they're irreceptive, they can't get along anymore. No, there's usually something really behind it. And when you have that many stacked up, it's serious. Okay, I don't want to be rude.
We're about done anyway.
Well, I have to be up at
about
5 hours.
I appreciate you coming on. I really do. Love it.
You
Thank
guys.
you. Love you too.
All right. I love the lab wrap. I'll let you two wrap up because You're a lot smarter than me anyway. So.
Hey, get some sleep.
It was great to be together again.
Safe travels.
I know. See you in a bit. Aloha.
Awesome. Yeah, that was great.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought, I thought it was really nice to have Chris here. I thought his law enforcement background made it interesting to talk about the various possibilities on the CEO shooter, the Thompson shooter, and I think that we got to do a nice job, kind of just laying out the 4 different distinct possibilities.
And everything that we're saying here is speculation. We don't have any superpowers to predict,
No.
anything. We're just kind of speculating, kicking stuff around, and not defending anybody. I'm not saying that insurance companies are wonderful, but I'm against cold-blooded murder, and it's I don't believe that this is a revolution. I don't believe that this is the way to go about it. And but I'll tell you what, it is an interesting study on humans and the psyche of maybe people pushed to the limit. You remember the movie John Q?
Yeah, sure. What about it?
Well, it kind of comes to mind. Just he's battling his healthcare and system, and he's like pushed against the wall, and so I'm not saying that's what this is, but I think that was actually based semi based on a true story. I believe it was, and I get it. I get it. Like my grandmother, like I said, she got worked over, about 15, was it 2010, 14 years ago. And it was heartbreaking, to see that. So I get it. And yes, Sebastian Rogers' birthday yesterday, 16 years old. And let's keep him in mind and know that the end goal, no matter what has happened, no matter who's responsible, that he is the focus. And any thoughts before we leave?
No, I just think that what you're seeing is this in everything from the discussion of the CEO shooter to the the discussion of who's the good dad, conversation in the Seth Rogers story, whatever, is this kind of modern way that we think about this archetype of father figure. Cops, are the cops doing their job? Are they bad? Are they going to solve this case? Are they doing their due diligence? Are the father figures that, the CEO figures, the businessmen, can they be trusted? Are they liars? Do they not care about us? Do they have our best interest at heart? It's a kind of theme. And what you see in this contemporary setting is this idea that there's something about overthrowing these figures, that have done a bad job of being paternal and caring about us. You saw it to a certain extent in the last election. The question of who's the right leader, who's the father figure that really cares, the aggressive one or the one who's quiet and kind of dull, and that is an interesting little question, floating around in the modern psyche. And because I think it says something about what's happening to the superego, to that kind of internalized idea of right and wrong that is supposed to be in here. And what you're seeing is this turning upside down of things where what really represents an acting out of the id, an acting out of the worst impulses of the self, is being mistaken for wisdom and what is right. And that is a turning on its head, of course, of the reality of what is right. And there is no religion, no philosophy of this world that is going to convince me that taking a firearm and shooting dead a person is good, unless it is justified as an act of war in some way that has to do with, saving lives because you're eliminating an enemy. There's no way to justify it. I don't care how you stand on your head and try. It's rationalization. Mm-hmm. And I think, why do people rationalize? Because a cause gives them a justification to act out the worst aspects of the self. They get a permission structure. There are some people, for example, that listen, there are a lot of wonderful police officers, there are a lot of wonderful firefighters, there's a lot of wonderful people in the military, but there are a few people that have these very brittle consciences that get involved in things like that, so they have a socially acceptable way to be mean to people or hurt people or kill people. There's that type too. And you have to kind of pause and think, does a person really have a cause? Do they really think they're just? Or are they masquerading that way to have a permission structure to act out because they're mad at the superego? And that I cannot help but think that that little meditation is going to turn out to be an important point with this story. Whatever the heck happens in this story, being mad at somebody that's supposed to provide for you who doesn't sure sounds a lot like something that goes on in a person's home. And, I think we've got to bear that in mind when we think of the real symbolism here. And then, of course, the symbolism of monopoly money instead of real money is that it's fake. It's fantasy. It's, here, I'm providing for you. Oh, wait, it isn't real money. It's fake. See? So the fakeness of it it has a cynical quality to it. And I just think we have to pause and think about that. We have to think about what person is intending to symbolically tell us and what they're accidentally psychologically telling us. And what they seem to be telling us is they're mad at authority figures. And we have to think about that. Anyway, on that point,
Really
I
quick.
do say, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
What do you think about this question?
Do I think you knew him personally? No, because when the guy is shot, when Thompson is shot in the leg and then spins around, there was nothing in his reaction or what he said or did that indicated a relationship with the shooter. Mm-hmm. Even in that mask, this guy had pretty distinct features. I mean, Josh, if you put a mask on right now above your mouth, you don't think I could recognize you?
No.
Yeah, I think I'd know that was you.
Mm.
Get my point? Yeah. And I don't think so. And the other thing is, I don't think he personally threatened this guy beforehand, because this guy walked around without an entourage. He wasn't walking around petrified. You ever have somebody threaten you? You
Yes.
walk around you walk around looking over your shoulder every second. You certainly wouldn't be worth millions of dollars and walk around sauntering down the street like that guy was, confidently with no entourage. It wouldn't happen that way.
Right.
And so I just don't think so. There may have been threats generally, like
I mean, I wouldn't be. I mean, I'm sure that people like that get.
Well, even if he had a security detail, where were they? So I just kind of think that it's likely that this guy, the killer, might have imagined that the attack on him was personal and he had a personal gripe with this, but I don't think this guy knew him from Adam. I mean, I think that's the whole point of the gripe, is you don't care about me. I'm a nobody to you. And that's right. He was. There was nobody to him. And consequently, I don't think he knew him.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't think so. But I do think that there's a lot of hope in this case, because I'm not kidding when I tell you, Josh, he left a mountain of evidence. And with the crowdsourcing, the photographs, whatever. And this is a kind of conspicuous guy. I mean, even the idea that he was considered attractive is going to make him stand out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All guys like 6'1", I think, and
a lot of the times too, Dr. Gary, is that the media. I'm not saying it. A lot of it has to do with who he murdered, but the media loves good-looking criminals.
Well, it's a matter of opinion. I mean, what can I tell you? There's always somebody in this world that thinks somebody is good looking that other people don't.
No, I don't think it's a matter of an opinion. I mean, look at Casey Anthony, you look at Amanda Knox, you look at right. I don't know. There's just it just.
But there are also some offenders I could name who, let's just say, aren't winning any beauty contests.
They can't help that.
But I'm just saying, like, they get on the front cover too, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying. I'm not.
Admittedly, he's he's.
Actually, I'm not pretty with the broad brush.
Right, he's symmetrical and tall and whatever. But I guess what I'm getting at is, I think that he has become an anti-hero. He's a kind of romanticized anti-hero. And that is what tends to happen with people who fly in the face of the rules and who, shun convention and who do the things that in our hearts we want, like aggressive things that we might want to do, but we would be stopped by our conscience.
Right.
So we romanticize people who let their feelings take over and do whatever they want to do. But we have to pause and think about, like, we are not troglodytes here. I mean, we're not supposed to be like, attracted to somebody because they're willing to rip a mastodon apart. This is, 2024. The idea is being drawn to somebody because of their willingness to shun convention and be aggressive and mistaking that for protective or going against the bad tribe, it's like caveman wiring.
It's like
You know,
Richard. It's
yeah.
like Richard Hernandez. After he was caught, then he became a sex symbol. If you would have seen him, Richard Ramirez. If you would have seen Richard Ramirez before he was caught, you'd be like, "Oh my God," But then
right. Oh, by the way, tomorrow, the Peacock series I'm on about Ramirez airs.
Beautiful.
It's called Ramirez, the Night Stalker tapes. And what it is because it's been advertised now, is that there are recordings of Ramirez that people didn't realize were out there. They were floating around. They were, I won't get into where they came from, but you'll see in the series. And I am one of the people who analyzes them. I talk about the family and I listen to the tapes and I comment. And I just kind of think that people will find it really interesting. Ramirez is in The New Evil. That's how they found me, that I had written about him. And it's a deeply disturbing case. I mean, the guy was absolutely horrendous.
Horrible.
I think there is a lack of focus on his child victims that he probably had. I mean, we know the first victim identified with DNA was really a kid. And there is a kind of tendency to miss the idea that in killing all these elderly people and older people and middle-aged people, that he had really been interested at one point in kids. And just to give you an idea of how random and horrendous he was. Now, talk about an offender that saw himself as a romantic figure, right? This is a guy who was very influenced by horror movies and Dracula coming in the middle of the night, to kill you and suck your blood, or well, turn you into an immortal vampire, but to prey on you in the middle of the night, or the image of the devil, right, lurking around to destroy souls. And, he was really sucked into that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That idea of the offender as telling a narrative, telling a story, is really, really interesting stuff. Because as one of the people commented earlier said, I feel like this guy is telling a story. Well, I think a lot of offenders, particularly serial offenders, are telling a story through that kind of fantasy narrative. And, I'm fascinated by that. And Ramirez was really one of those people. I mean, clearly. So I'm fascinated by that case. I think people will really like the Peacock series. I have no idea how much of my interviewing they used, because sometimes they can interview for hours and hours and hours and use 5 minutes of it. But I know I'm on all episode, every episode.
Yeah.
So people might find that interesting. I hope they will. What the heck just happened? Okay. Yeah, that's it. Richard Ramirez, the is right there. Yeah, that's you notice how he's all sort of fixed up to look kind of rock star-ish and iconic there.
Yeah.
When he was a kind of scary looking guy with halitosis and creepy kind of teeth and kind of scary looking. Yeah.
Terrifying individual. Terrifying.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, people turn just like every other, like Alex Murdaugh and those, they turn into a pseudo, sex symbol to some people, not majority, but they get their fans. They really, really do. It's kind of Bundy was the same way. And
right. Because the psychopath, the reason psychopathy stays in the gene pool, let's put it this way, is that there's always going to be somebody who finds the strength and the fearlessness and the shunning of convention of the psychopath sexy, because they think of it that the person could protect them, right? That the person is a protector. And for that reason, it shouldn't be surprising that you can see psychopaths in power.
Wade
all throughout.
Wilson.
Well, what are you thinking about that?
Well, he's got like an entourage of women that put money on his books.
That's the way it is.
And
then
and
you get,
guys too, by the way.
yeah, and then you get the people that are attracted to people because they have committed crime, the hybristophilics. I have to tell you, one of these days, I'm including in my new book that I'm working on an idea that I've never heard anybody talk about before, which is, I think, the definition of hybristophilia, where you're attracted to somebody who's committed crime, should be expanded to include people who become attracted to people who work with people who have committed crime. Because there are people, in the true crime world, for example, who go in and interview killers and whatever, and people develop those same fixations on them because of their nearness to people that commit crimes. It's very strange. It's like people who venerate saints because they're near God. It's a weird kind of thing, and I just kind of think that is a spin-off of the construct of hybristophilia, but it happens. Right. A lot of people in the true crime world and the forensic world that are public figures get those people that are fascinated because they have been near people who've killed. Strange stuff. But I'm not really sure why, because I guess they reason, wow, you must be brave if you're willing to go into the room with these people. You must be smarter than them because you understand them. You must be. So they kind of, and of course, it takes a great deal of empathy to want to deal with these horrendous people and chat with them and so forth. You have to be able to understand them, and that empathy could be misconstrued too. But I think it's fascinating stuff, And but with Ramirez, I hope people will watch. I hope people will tell us in the comments next time, maybe on the interview room. People will tell us what they think of it. I haven't been added to the credits yet for the show on IMDb, but I will be.
We need that happening now.
And, well, it matters, Josh.
Of course it does.
So that's how people find you as an expert.
Of course. Absolutely. It does matter.
Yeah. So
I
look forward to it. What'd you say, Josh?
I said it's your work.
It's not that. It's more that it leads you to more shows. And Peacock is no joke. Being on a Peacock series is really great. It's not my first. But the idea of listening to tapes and analyzing it is very cool to me. And Ramirez is dead. It's like a free for all. You can say whatever you want. He's not going to get mad at you. You could just have like a field day. And the other thing about that is, and this is public, so I can say this, is that they really found a lot of people, family members, things like that, people in the Ramirez story that really haven't spoken. And you're going to hear from people. It's going to be fascinating. And I'm just sad I didn't get to appear on the Netflix series on Zodiac.
Yeah.
I would have given, it's my favorite of all cases.
Hey, you and I don't agree on that case either.
Oh, we've never really talked about it. If you ever want to do a Zodiac episode or two, I'm game. I have a almost encyclopedic knowledge of the Zodiac case. I know everything about it. It's my favorite.
Yeah, it's a fascinating. It's one of those kind of like, I kind of think the Zodiac, and I don't want to get into the whole thing, but like what's going on with this CEO killing, is that I always thought that they were just one step behind, or just a missed this or a missed that. Like I as far as sophistication goes, I never thought that he was, the coding and all that stuff, I get all that. But as a person that, commits crimes kind of like this guy, people are saying, well, he's an assassin, or he's a ninja, or whatever it is that they're saying. I don't think that this guy is. And
which guy, the CEO shooter?
Either.
You don't think so? Zodiac clearly was not, he was no imbecile.
No.
I'll give you an example, just a simple clue. As a psychologist, when I read what people write, I often count the number of syllables in their words because it's a clue to their IQ. It's a clue to intellect. And Zodiac was a multi-syllabic writer. This is not a dummy. There
No,
aren't
I
too many.
don't think so either.
There are a lot of people who, in their ordinary correspondence, do not use words like consternation, things like that. This is not a stupid guy. Just as, for example, the author of the John Bonet ransom letter uses the word attaché. That's not a dummy.
No, I don't think he was-
Right. You have to pay attention to people's vocabulary, and in fact, there's a word that comes from Latin which cracks me up because it's sort of tongue in cheek, which is sesquipedalian, and sesquipedalian means a word with 7 syllables, and that's their way of talking about people who try to show off and look smart by using really big words. Right? They're sesquipedalian, and Zodiac has a little sesquipedalian quality to him.
Yeah, he definitely loved to pontificate.
He likes to be smarter than you. But the thing that is most interesting about Zodiac, and we can have a long conversation about this, is that he is one of those mastermind type offenders who is not overtly sexually motivated. The expression of domination and control is more through intellect, being smarter than you, than the overt sexual quality, right? There's a little bit of something, for example, the women dying more often than the males, the stabbing pattern on Cecilia Shepard, which includes some areas that are erogenous zones, the seeming enjoyment of hunting, the Betty Lou Jensen in the there on Lake Herman Road in the dark when you rapidly kill the male. There are in the Cherry Joe Bates case, claiming that there was some grazing of the breast, and that's interesting because you see that also in the Kohlberger case, where it isn't that overtly sexual, right? And or in the David Berkowitz case, right? Even though he's gratifying himself setting fires and things like that, it's not that overt. And some of those guys, those category 16 killers, as I call them, they express the same thing that you express through the sexual drive through other things, like obnoxiously writing letters and demanding that you get attention through the newspaper and the press, that kind of thing, or the police. It's that same expression of domination and control without having to express it sexually. And that's very, very interesting about Zodiac, because it suggests, of course, an inadequacy that underlies everything he's doing. But there's a lot we could talk about. I can give you my profile of that person. I can talk about the different suspects and why I think some of them are really just wrong. Really interesting little tidbits that I've picked up over the years of talking about it to every expert under the sun. I have a lot to say about it, and I'm also very interested in why he stopped when he did, and very abruptly. And spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! No, I do not believe Zodiac was Arthur Lee Allen. I do not believe that Arthur Lee Allen was. No, I do not. And
I got to admit that there's smoke there. There was, at least.
There was some circumstantial stuff, but there were also very serious things that ruled him out.
Sure.
And that I have a really big problem with that certainty that, like, for example, in the great, I love the book Zodiac by Robert Graysmith. Love it. So not a knock to Graysmith. I love that book. And I love his cartooning. But I have a problem with that certainty about Arthur Lee Allen in the sequel, and certainly in the film.
Dr. Gary, I'm gonna take a quick shot at this one. I like to make up words. What does that mean about me? It means nothing whatsoever.
I like to make words up.
Yeah, and that means nothing whatsoever. It just means you like to do something.
Well,
you should start a new language. That would be cool. That would take up a lot of time.
Michael Stone loved to make up words. He absolutely loved to make up words. I love coining phrases, for types of crime that don't have names yet. And for example, very bizarre little tidbit about Michael Stone is that he coined the extremely long Greek name for the paraphilia in which an offender has relations with a severed head. There are offenders who do that, and that offense did not have a name, so he named it. It has a name that's like this long. It's actually in the New Evil. It's a good, if you want to look it up. It's really disturbing, but the point is everything has to have a name. You need, you need names for these things, and so I'm a very big fan of defining things, coming up with words. I think it's wonderful. It just suggests a person who is a categorizer, and who becomes frustrated when there is not a label for things. And there is also the problem of certain words not really capturing the meaning, the true semantic meaning of things. That's why I'm very fond of, for example, Japanese, because they have words for things that we don't even think to have words for. Certain sensations, longings, things like that. And then you have the wonderful German language with its, 80 letter long words that they create by compound to refer
Like the Wunderwaffen.
Well, they're like much longer than that. They're wonderful. But
German's very limited.
Yeah, but I think it suggests somebody who becomes frustrated that there isn't a way to accurately refer to something, that really wants, a perfect label for things. And
yeah, but sometimes words that already exist get replaced by cooler words, like yeeted.
Right, like the
Yeah,
I like the word yeet. Well, I love how language, the way language, Schweinhund, the way that people, the way that language evolves is really interesting. And the thing is, just to get back to Zodiac very quickly, is that Zodiac liked wordplay. Zodiac had a kind of sardonic sense of humor. He wrote like Tom Lehrer style kind of lampoons on things like, a Gilbert and Sullivan song from the Mikado, that kind of thing. He was theatrical. He liked an audience. He liked to mock. He liked to, and you can imagine that in life he would have been that kind of guy, a guy that made a lot of wordplay, a guy that was very punny, a guy that intentionally pretended he didn't know how to spell words when he clearly knew how to spell them. That like Christmas, M-A-S-S, and you see, that's actually very clever because the word Christmas does come from Christ Mass, right? Yeah. So is it misspelling or is he smart? So, but
probably misspelling.
What'd you say?
Probably a misspelling.
No, there was a lot of it. He did it all throughout his letters, the misspellings.
When did you become familiar with the word yeet? How long?
Social media. Social media
within the last 5 or 6 years, right?
Well, that's 2 years. I love the word yeet. I think it's a lot of fun. And because I like it because there's an onomatopoeia to it, because it sounds like a person flying.
Yeet! Well, that's the thing, is it? So my next door neighbor, she's an elderly lady. She's probably like 83, and her grandson would visit her all the time. And he was kind of like your skater, long hair, like, "What's up, dude? What's up, bro?" And one time he's like, "Yeah, man, this is the first time ever. This is how I know that like I'm not cool like I thought that I was," because he comes up to me, he goes, "Yeah, he's like, 'What's up, bro? I was supposed to have a date with a hottie tonight, but she yeeted me, bro.'" And I said, "I don't even know what that means." And and
it also mean rejected.
Well, she just tossed him to the side, I guess.
Oh, I see. So it's not. So it means like to be thrown away in that sense too.
I guess, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
But when he said it to me, like I went a little cross-eyed. I was like, "Hey, buddy, have a good day." Then I went and told my kids. I said, "Hey, what does this mean?" And they just like laughed at me. So,
do you have any other modern words that you enjoy using? Because many of them bother me. I don't like a lot of the slang, the contemporary slang. It bothers me. I don't like things like, for example, it bothers me when people use the word literally wrong. They use literally when they mean figuratively.
Well,
right?
That literally bothers me.
Ate a horse. I'm so hungry. I literally ate a horse. No, you didn't. If you ate a horse, you'd be in a lot of trouble. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's that one bothers me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Literally, but literally is like, I find that kind of, but that's not really a modern word. Literally has been around forever.
No, they're using it wrong. They mean right. The other thing that bothers me is, and I don't know how we're going down this path. I guess Zodiac.
We're on Union time, brother.
That's true. It sets you off when you start thinking about language, right? Yeah. But Zodiac had fun with it, you know. So we're having fun with language, you know. But I think the other thing that kind of bothers me is when people do these little portmanteaus, which is the word that means when you take two semantically similar words and you put them together to make a new word, right?
Mm.
So because a portmanteau refers to one of those big luggage cases that has two drawers in it. So it means like you take two things and you put them in one box, right? So like, let's say Arnold Schwarzenegger is the governor and he played the Terminator. So you call him the Governator, right? You make a word out of two. And
Sure.
sometimes people do it in a way where they think they're being intelligent, but they don't know what, like, so they'll say like, irregardless. They mean to say irrespective and regardless. And they mash it together and it becomes irregardless.
Well,
That's
because
right.
irregardless and regardless covers both.
Well, regardless and irrespective are like synonyms.
Right.
And they've been jammed together to make that word irregardless. It's not a word.
It's not a word.
And you know, and so, but sometimes portmanteaus are a lot of fun. I mean, you know, you can put words together, like when you know, like when George Bush Jr., you know, George W. said, "I'm the decider." Well, decide, that's not a word, but you know, he was sort of combining semantic concepts from other words and created a new word. You know, and what happened?
He did not do that on purpose.
Well, that's just it. When you see somebody doing that, you have to decide: are they doing it because the architecture of their brain is failing, or are they doing it because the architecture of existing language is not satisfactory to them, so they're having fun? And you know, for example, anyone who listens to me knows that I love making puns, and my favorite thing to do is to make a pun that people don't know I'm making. That cracks me up, and it's like for my own personal amusement. I do it all the time, and it's just a kind of a thing where I'm playing with language. I think it's fun,
Right.
and but there are some people
like you're a punny guy. You're a punny guy.
Funny, right? Get thee to a punnery as a
Yeah. Yeah.
experience.
Well, like
Right.
it's like satire, you know, like a lot of people do not understand satire, but satire can mean a lot of different things too.
Well, yeah, but you know what it is? People who are very spiritually inclined are often very funny or playful. And I think the reason is that a joke is very similar to a spiritual construct because it's about something that looks like one thing, but if you look behind the curtain, there's a deep thing behind it. It's very similar to like mysticism or spirituality. Jokes are like that. That's why comedians, to me, my brother is a comedian. Comedians are like philosophers, right? They're joking, and behind the joke is truth itself, if you're smart enough to see it, right? And I think that's the same way. Words are like that. If you use them the right way,
Right.
you can say something really, really true with a double meaning, or you have to look behind it. That's why I love poetry so much, you know. And I think there is a spirituality to language in that way, and jokes, and so a really bright person, you know, is going to do some interesting things with language. And I think that's what you saw going on there with Zodiac. He was amusing himself with language.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he obviously understood like ciphers and words, and he fancied himself probably a very smart person, and he probably was a very smart person. But I'm just saying that I never thought that he was like a criminal mastermind.
No, he thought that he was. I think look, if we're going to have an episode on Zodiac, we're going to talk about it. But the thing you got to remember about Zodiac is because he was more interested in the fame than the thrill of killing. I know he was, but even though he claimed he was interested in the most dangerous game of all, right? Killing, hunting people, right? I think we can deduce that he was more interested in the fame than the actual killing because he started taking credits for killings that he didn't do. He figured out that you could just say there are a lot of random crimes out there and you're not going to know their mind because I'm going to just make them look like they were ordinary crimes. And then he would jack up the total number of crimes. In his letters, there'd be these ridiculous numbers like San Francisco Police Department, 0, Zodiac, and it would be this huge number like in the score. But it was more than the canonically, confirmed victims, because that's what he would do. He would hear about a case in the newspaper, and then he would sort of take credit. He would hint that, but all the information on, like Kathleen Johns, for example, was there in the paper. So now, granted, she saw the Zodiac Wanted poster and said that was the man who had abducted her and the baby. But there are other cases where, like, the shooting of a cop in the car, another one, that you kind of got the feeling that he was just kind of taking credit. And that's why I think for him, the infamy was more important. And that's why Zodiac is such a modern killer. He's really new evil, in my opinion, because the motive being infamy is a very modern construct. That's the whole thing. And so to me, he's like, as somebody who, along with Michael Stone, coined this construct of new evil, speaking of coining words, right, in different phrases, it needs an emblem, right? And if there were ever an emblem, it's Zodiac.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Anyway, but that's a fascinating conversation.
We should do that. And I think thanks for coming on. It was nice to have Chris as well, and we'll do this again really soon. And
Did I put you to sleep yet? If I put you to sleep with my Zodiac musings, I hope not.
Absolutely not. No, of course.
Well, I've got a lot to say about it, and we could do a walkthrough from first, with the very first question being, who was the first victim? Was it Sherry Jo Bates? Was it one of these cases that was like a fledgling offense that has been proposed that came even a longer time ago than that? Was it the Faraday Jansen, like Herman Road case? Was it was it Blue Rock Spring? We got to talk about that, and then we could start to get into what could be glimpsed from each. Was there a sexual motive? Was it ego, so forth. So a lot of people, I think, would really like to tune into that. Yeah.
And before Chris left, I would just want everybody to know we will be restarting up episodes of the Witness Box here shortly. I get asked about it a lot. So
that official?
That's official, man.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it, but I didn't know that yet.
Well, you heard it right here first. Yes.
Given that I'm a part of it, that's pretty good news.
Yeah, of course you're a part of it. And yes, it's just, that things have been coming up with everybody, and everybody's been sort of.
That's amazing. I'm so happy that we're going to do the Witness Box again. When are we going to do the Witness Box?
Hopefully is when Chris gets back.
Oh, this is so cool. Well,
from his little trip. Yeah.
Made my day. Well, we've got plenty to talk about, and just remember, it's only a matter of time until there's some new horrendous story in the newspaper.
Yes.
And I guess, with some more of our wordplay, when you think of horrible news, think of us.
Dr. Gary, thank you so much for being here.
All right, thank you. Take care. And if I don't talk to everybody, have a wonderful holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate, if anything. But even if you don't practice any religion or don't care about any of that, it still is a nice thing to think about generosity, putting other people first, being kind, the idea that the light conquers, all those things. And so I think for everybody, it's a beautiful time of renewal. I suspect it's going to be a really interesting new year on a lot of levels, but let's just say enjoy the tail end of 24, and let's hope it's a renewal of some sort.
Absolutely,
There's always a chance. Okay, take care, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
And there it is. That was a great episode, and thank you to Chris McDonough, Dr. Gary Brucato for both joining us tonight and giving us their expert opinion. Even though if you don't agree with everything that we say, that's all right. Don't mind. Most of the stuff, all right. It was a great episode, great show. I enjoyed it, and we'll see y'all next time.